This is My First Job in Sports, the show created to kickstart your journey toward a successful career in the sports industry. Presented by SBRnet, your comprehensive source for data focused on sports fans and more. Here's your host of My First Job in Sports, Neil Schwartz.
If you didn't have a chance to either watch or listen to our last episode, I think it was 38, interview with Brian Anderson, I have to say in the 38 odd episodes that we've done, there hasn't been one that has been more, I think, uplifting and also more powerful in terms of the messaging. That sports is really, not just about what happens between the lines, but really has the ability to lift people up and bring people together.
I completely agree. Very encouraging, very inspiring. He went through a lot and he's in a fantastic spot right now. So I think anyone that's going through anything will get something out of that.
Yeah, I would agree. One of the new segments that we've incorporated into My First Job in Sports is something called Neil's Data Dump. It's a little bit of pandering to my business, SBRnet, which of course provides fandom data for the sports industry. And one of the things that I've been talking a lot about lately and just having a lot of conversations about is the effect that I think that the World Cup in 2026 will have on soccer here in the United States. And, people have asked me about, what do I think about attendance? There have been some reports, by the way, in the media that some of the cities are having a problem generating the revenue. They're not at their budgets. They're not where they thought they would be. Dr. G, why do you think that maybe soccer is not, are you getting like a good positive vibe from the soccer world, or is it just something that's going to take a little bit more time?
I think it's just going to take a little bit more time. I really do. And gauging from just a student level, I'll probably say maybe 20% of my students are soccer fans, 25%. Right. And so I just think it'll take time. But the World Cup is coming. And I think the World Cup is going to play a huge role in that.
So what I did was I did a little bit of a quickie analysis about what's going on with respect to live attendance at international soccer events here in the United States. Now, many of these, of course, are either some sort of friendly events or maybe some sort of small tournaments and things like that. And, one of the things we do show is that live attendance, and as this chart on the screen currently shows, live attendance is actually up here in the United States for international soccer. And I do think that that's a trend, or that might be what I would like to call a predictor of what we might see. I will tell you that the last World Cup, something interesting happened that I had not seen before in my 25 years in the sports business. For the first time ever, I saw the World Cup drive what I call the big three when it comes to soccer revenue awareness. Number one is that it drove both attendance and it drove participation. So more kids were getting out on the field to play soccer after the World Cup. Number two is that I saw it drive sales of equipment. Footwear, apparel, shin guards, all of the necessary equipment that you need for soccer. And the other big thing I saw drive was television ratings. And, it just really drove ratings. Having the United States reach the round of 16 was a big part of that. There's no question. The United States audience is very coveted. When it comes to international soccer, it's coveted actually in a lot of sports. So we really did see that. So, it's really going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen in 2026. I know I'm going to be watching. The United States has gotten basically got a free pass in terms of having to qualify, so we know they're in. And there's going to be a bunch of games here in the United States, so it should be fun. So today we're going to talk to, I hope I get this right, Brady Ulloa, who works for, God, I was really sweating that one out there for a second, Dr. J, who works for Utah Soccer Properties, Real Salt Lake, and the Utah Royals. Both teams are owned by the Larry Miller Sports Organization. Brady works for both, as well as a third club that's owned by the company. And Brady talks about data analytics. I know that's a subject very near and dear to my heart, and I know it's also one very near and dear to Dr. G's heart. So without any delay, let's get to our interview with Brady. God, I'm going to mess this up again. Ulloa from Utah Soccer Properties. Brady, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much for having me. Very excited for the conversation we're going to be having here and what we're going to learn.
Brady, I'm really excited too because, as I looked at your background, you're heavily into data, and as Dr. G can swear, or my daughter might say, I am the oldest living data geek. And of course, SBRnet is in the data business. So, data is kind of in my front yard, so to speak. So Brady, what we'd like to start off with is to get a little bit of your background. Where you're from, how you got started, where the whole love of sports comes from, college, job, the whole bit. So Brady, the floor is yours.
Wow, it's a loaded question. We'll see how much I can cover in the span that we have. But just briefly, born and raised in Utah, played soccer and all the other sports growing up. But as you know, time is very key as you go into the junior high and high school years. Had to kind of choose only one sport, and that's what soccer kind of became my passion, and that's what I did growing up. Now luckily I do cheer for Real Salt Lake, who is the local team here to Utah. And now I'm part of their organization. And so we'll get through that, but really, really cool that I grew up coming to Real Salt Lake games, being a true fan of the team. And now I get to help influence and make decisions within the organization. After high school, kind of went on and studied statistics at Brigham Young University, similar to maybe most people that, might be listening to this, didn't really know what I wanted to do growing up. And
not unusual.
Didn't really know what major I wanted to do either. And it took me probably 1.5 years or 2 years into college to decide, hey, I wanted to go the statistics route with a minor in business. And that's kind of how I ended up where I'm at now. And it's been a ride, and it's been a lot of learnings and how I can become better and how I can make a difference. And ultimately, that's kind of my why is, how can I help an organization make a difference by using data?
Sure.
And I find your background so interesting, Brady, because having a background in data and statistics and analytics, and you really could have chosen any other path outside of sports. So as Neil always says and asks, why sports? Why did you go the sports route?
Honestly, when I first graduated out of college, I didn't really have that many options, or I didn't have a job offer anywhere. I was just applying to different analyst positions and roles within Utah. And, it was almost like a click that, hey, maybe I could reach out to someone and make a connection with someone at Real Salt Lake, and maybe they could use my skill set. Now, at the time, I thought the only way that you could use data in sports was kind of on the team side, influencing, transfers and researching and scouting players. Little did I know that there's
on-field performance has been a big use of data for a long time.
Exactly. Little did I know that there was a whole business aspect of it that, hey, we can influence the business side of an organization through using data. And so it really just was almost a coincidence that I kind of landed in the right inboxes of people at the right time. And they were kind of looking to grow this space in the organization. And they brought me on. And, I started out as an intern, just seeing where I could kind of poke and prod and make a difference within the organization.
Look, as it's been well known, I am a data guy. I mean, I own a data company. I love data. I developed my, let's say, attraction or affinity to data, 25 years ago. Tell me how you, though, got to data, where what resonated with you that said, what? I want to really focus on the data side of sports. And then we're going to ask about the business side, how you're able to apply that to the business side of sports.
Yeah, going back to when I was in college, not really knowing what I wanted to do, I think it, really stemmed from reflecting on my childhood and the activities that I enjoyed doing. And I always remember growing up, my parents or my family would receive the newspaper every morning, back when that was a thing, physical newspaper. And I would always open it up and turn to the sports section. And I knew, the box scores of every single game, every single sport, every single player. I was the stats kind of whiz. And when I was in college and reflecting on, what I truly had a passion for, kind of those memories of opening up the sports section in the newspaper and looking at stats came back to me. And I realized that was something that I really enjoyed and something that I wanted to pursue. And what better way to pursue a career or pursue an industry that you have a passion for? And so that's kind of where it all started. Now going into sports, it's a whole different landscape of, different data sets and backgrounds that you need and different departments. And in sports, you kind of hit a lot of different departments in an organization. Whereas in, other companies, it may just be strictly financial or strictly whatever it may be, kind of industry specific. But in sports, it's kind of a mini business that we have all the different departments, and we're able to kind of touch and influence all those. So that's really a cool, unique opportunity that I have to be able to touch kind of different departments within an entire business.
I find that to be incredibly unique too. And I think we need a pause, actually, Brady and Neil. I think we got ahead of ourselves because I think we need to make sure students understand what you do. Because when we see business intelligence manager, what is an analyst, they just look at it and just think, oh, research, I want nothing to do with it. But as you were talking about, it's very unique and you get to touch various components of sport organizations. So first things first, can you please talk to us about what in the world you do? What in the world is a senior business analyst? But then I also think we need to dive into what careers and data looks like in sports, because I don't think students really realize how many opportunities there are. So go ahead.
For sure. And yeah, I think if I can sum it up, there's a lot of different things, in sports and in other industries, there's a lot of things that you do that don't fit your job description. And it's a matter of just, hey, I raise my hand and this project comes up and I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to take it on. But, if I could sum it up in one sentence, what I do, it's, how can I drive revenue for an organization by using the data accessible to us, whether that be in ticketing or in marketing or sponsorship? How can we use the data that we have kind of in our ecosystem to drive additional revenue, to drive eyeballs on our social pages, to bring more people in to the stadium to watch our games, to drive sponsorship dollars and who we should be targeting for that. And so that's kind of a summary, I guess, of what I do. There's a lot more to it, but ultimately it comes down to how can we drive more revenue through the data that we have accessible to us.
When you were at BYU, what types of courses did you take that you felt have been able to benefit or add to your skill set as you've been out in the job world?
No, that's a good question, and I think looking back at my time at BYU, if I were to redo it in the industry that I'm in now, I maybe wouldn't have taken the stats route. I would have maybe focused more on information systems or computer science and kind of having those backgrounds, because that's kind of a lot of the things that I'm doing right now. And so I really take credit from my information systems courses, specifically the ones that I did regarding Excel and, VBA and coding, and getting a little bit more experience in that realm is kind of a big piece of what I do now. Regardless of, all the stats courses and modeling that I did, a lot of times, at least in our organization, we're a lot more basic almost. And you kind of need those entry level Excel or Microsoft skills rather than complex modeling or coding, which you learn in the stats degree.
I'm sure you saw me smiling from ear to ear when you said Excel several times, because I teach a class in which we use Excel with data and students don't understand it. But you just said you use Excel a lot of times. And so really building off of Neil's previous question, again, if we're thinking about students, maybe they're a sport management major, maybe they're a stats major, and they know, hey, I want to work in sports and I'm interested in data analytics. What are some things they can do now when they're an undergrad to help prepare them? Like you say, you mentioned Excel, so love it. Say that again, Excel. But what are some other things on top of Excel that they can do to prepare, whether it's classes, whether it's experiences, all of that?
What I like to tell people that kind of reach out to me with similar questions is find a project that you like and do it and post about it. Kind of put your brand out there, whether it be whatever type of project it may be. Like I had a personal affiliation or fandom of fantasy football. And so I created this master spreadsheet in Excel to kind of track different players. And that was kind of a cool project of mine that helped develop my skills in that, software platform. And it's a passion, and it's something that I really enjoyed doing and did at that time. And it helped elevate kind of my skills. And so that's kind of one piece that I would say is, find a project. And if it's relative to a sports organization, great. Like find a project that you can do regarding, there's a lot of attendance numbers out there that are, public information. How can you, create a model for a team saying, hey, you're going to drive this much attendance on XYZ game because of XYZ reason.
Sure.
That's even a bigger selling point to, if you're trying to get into an organization, is showing that organization how you can already bring value to them without, being part of their organization.
You're in a unique position working for the Larry Miller sports and entertainment family. They don't own one property, they own multiple properties. And I think that really gives you, probably a lot of interesting opportunities. Brady, tell us a little bit about your typical day. When you get in, what does a typical day look like?
Typical day. There's a lot to do. I think it depends on what day of the week we're talking about, how many days in advance of a game or a match or whatever it may be. But, typically, if we could sum it up generally, it's, maybe the first few hours I'm checking reports, making sure that everything kind of in our visualization software is running, all the dashboards are up and look accurate.
What do you use for your visualization software, by the way?
So right now, Real Salt Lake, the soccer clubs are on Domo, and our other entities and the Miller Sports Entertainment District, kind of like you mentioned, the Bees and the Megaplex are on Power BI. Got it. So we're kind of on two different platforms right now, and we're navigating what that looks like with upper leadership. And so it's understanding and making sure, because as you guys are well aware, if you deliver a report and there's maybe one number off or something to a stakeholder,
that's the one they find.
That's the one they find, and they lose trust in you. And
that's the one they find.
When you're trying to find the buy-in and tell leaders, hey, we need to be using data, you got to make sure that those reports and those dashboards are up to date. And so that's kind of the first checklist, if we're going to go, of things that I make sure are up and running and looking good. The other may be, hey, we're doing this promotion for a game. Let's make sure that we have allocated resources to send out a communication or the correct list, or targeting, who we're going to target for certain campaigns, whatever that may be. And then it's a lot of strategy. How can we sell out the building? If it's, right now we have a game this upcoming weekend, and so we're talking about how can we sell out this building and how can we drive more revenue, and what are the levers that we can pull. Some teams like ours, for instance, it's not an automatic sellout. You may find teams where they don't really have to do much and they're, successful. For us, it's how can we pull all these different levers to make a sellout happen? And so that's kind of another piece. Another piece would be, just strategizing internally with, different departments, as we kind of mentioned at the top, making sure that they have all the resources that they need and how they can be successful, and empowering the different departments to act on their own and reach out for the reports or the data that they need, and trying to teach them and educate them. Another piece is just, networking with other teams.
Sure.
Being kind of a small-sided team that I have been previously to the Larry H. Miller acquisition. I've kind of been a one-man team with Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals. And so the best way that I can learn and develop skills for myself is reaching out to other people and other teams and developing great relationships with them and figuring out what are they doing that we can learn from?
Right.
What were the mistakes that they made that we can also learn from? And so kind of those are, maybe give a good idea of things that I do. And like I said, there's a lot more to it, but generally speaking, that's kind of a broad sense of kind of what my day looks like.
And I kind of want you to go a little bit more deeper into your day, because I want some VIP insight right now.
She just wants you to say excel more. I know Dr. G, and I know where she's headed,
Kind of, a little bit. And I really want you to provide a real life example. Okay. We didn't sign any
case study here.
Yeah. Really, I want you to give us insight into a real life situation where you all utilize data to make a big decision. For sure. And I think, drawing back on my experience, we started this project in 2022, I want to say, of season ticket pricing. And I feel like using data to choose or develop kind of your season ticket model for a team is huge. And that's kind of when I was entrusted with that kind of project in our organization. And we saw immediate results, using Excel and other models to pull all of our, sections in our stadium. And we look at a number of different areas of, what's the sell-through rate? What's the renewal rate? How are tickets performing on the secondary market? Is it full? Is it not? Is it a lot of comp tickets? And so we have this master spreadsheet, and this is something that we just went through for our organization right now, that we just rolled out pricing, and it's a really fun product and project for me, because you can almost see the immediate impact of, hey, we're going to make these changes to our season ticket pricing model, and it's going to drive XYZ revenue for the organization. And we saw that in 22. And it was a huge win for our organization to start using data behind
why we're making the changes we're doing, rather than just, hey, like, I think it should go up this much, or hey, I think we should go down this much. But actually having the data analytics insights behind that has been massive for our organization. And that was kind of the turning point when we started leaning in and using more and more data, because our organization saw, hey, 10, 15% more revenue from tickets. And that's across the board of like the season ticket model influences single game tickets, group tickets, what half season, mini packages, everything kind of relies on that season ticket model being successful. And so that's a real life example that we just went through and we released to our season ticket members. And it's a fun project for me to do with every single year. And as you work on a project that much, you get better and better at it. I remember in 2022 when we first did it, this was like a 3 or 4 month project, because it was like, okay, we don't really know what we're doing. We're going to try this, or we're going to bounce these ideas off of. And, myself and the head of ticketing, we've developed a great relationship over the years. And we've gotten to the point where we can do this now in, a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, thinking about it and really looking at the data and being able to make that decision. And that's one thing in any industry is, as you do it over and over and over again, you get better and better, and it takes less time. And so you're able to take on additional projects as well.
Brady, one of the things that we encourage, and one of the things we talk about a lot with students in general, I meet with students all the time, is, the power of the internship and getting the right and a good internship. What was some of your internship experiences? Did you have an internship? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the almost regrets, or one thing that I would have changed about my college experiences.
Okay.
I didn't really have any internship. I didn't really set up. I was, very internal, introvert, and I continue to be kind of that way. But I feel like I could have done more to put myself out there and say, hey, I need to go get this type of experience. And that's probably a fault of mine of why I didn't really have anything set up after graduating. And to those listening, like that, if you don't have anything set up, like that's totally fine. I'm where I'm at because I didn't have anything set up, and kind of the bricks fell how they did because of my experience. My internship with Real Salt Lake was a little different because I got hired on right before the pandemic happened, and that kind of changed everything in the sports industry. And so it wasn't, a direct internship per se, more of just a part-time role. And I quickly transitioned in the ticketing department because that's where the budget was in the organization. And there wasn't really a budget for an analytics, internship or part-time or whatever it may be, because of the cuts that had to be made with the COVID pandemic that happened. Right. And so I think the biggest thing though, with anyone is finding a leader that you are able to work with or learn from, making sure that you have a mentor, whether that be in sports or out of sports, that can help guide and lead you. Because
who was your mentor?
I've had a lot throughout the years, and I don't want to name any names specifically because I feel like every year there's someone new that I kind of lean on and learn from. I mentioned that, reaching out to other teams and learning from them. And so I think there's some great teams that I've, specifically in the MLS that I've, developed relationships with and have been learning and almost trailing them in what they're doing. I guess I can call out, specifically Minnesota United has been a great help to me. St. Louis SC, which is a new team in the MLS. I know you spoke with someone from Austin FC.
I did.
In the past,
we actually spoke to 2 people.
And those have been great relationships as well. And so it's a fun environment being in the sports industry where on the business side, everyone kind of helps each other out, which is awesome. And it was kind of a relief to me. Whereas on the sporting side, people don't really talk about what they're doing. But it's great to hear, and developing those relationships with other teams and learning, how can we all grow together?
Yeah. Leave the competition on the field. Just remember one thing somebody taught me very early on in my business career: all boats go up on a rising tide. And, you talking to your fellow, other analysts or other marketing people, you're raising the tide and all boats are going to go up. Leave the competition to the field. That's not really, you know what I mean? It's whether you sell more or less tickets, you need to do what you need to do in order for your business to be successful. There's no question about it.
And in the MLS, it's a little unique how all the teams are sort of governed by the league. And so, yeah, exactly to your point. Yeah. When one team succeeds, we all kind of succeed. And so why not all help each other out and have that attitude from the get-go?
I love that, Brady. And earlier you talked about the importance of building your brand. You said, hey, when you develop this, you should develop your brand. And so can you talk to students about that, of it really the importance of building your brand and how you built your brand? You kind of hinted earlier at that maybe you sent a couple of LinkedIn messages or emails to see who would poke at it. How did you intentionally design who you want to be professionally?
Certainly. And, one thing, being a data person that I am, it's all about numbers and a game of numbers. And, your inbox or your message may not hit one person, but the more and more you do it, the more likely that you are to get a response. And so I think that's something that I learned very on, is that I shouldn't take rejection personally.
Sure.
Or a non-response from someone personally. Yeah. And so that's one piece of advice that I would give is, hey, don't be afraid to reach out. It's not weird. It's not whatever it may be. And if it is, then, you already aren't in connection with that person. So just be professional about it and it won't backfire on you. And so that's one thing that I would say is, reaching out to multiple people and finding out, what they're doing, how they got to where they're at. I've done that throughout, other industries, not just sports early on. And, there's a lot of people that didn't respond to messages and a lot of people that have. And, I've been grateful for those that have, and I don't fault those that didn't, because, being in a place where you are receiving a lot of messages, it's hard to keep up with, some things that come through. And so another add to that is just being persistent with things. You don't want to be nagging, and it may feel like that, but if there is a desire within a student to be in a certain organization or have a certain role, be persistent with that person, or find out, hey, is there someone else on your team, or is there someone else in that organization? I don't need to speak with you directly, but maybe there's someone else that can help me out. And so that's what I would say. And then, ultimately it comes down to how do you portray yourself on different social platforms? As bad as it is, LinkedIn is a great place, but if an employer really wants you, they may be looking or stalking you almost on other social platforms, and where those may be more personal or your personal life, still part of your brand and who you are. And so, fortunately for me, it's easy for me to represent, Real Salt Lake wherever I go, because I'm a fan of the team. And, I want to make sure that wherever I go, if I'm wearing, the brand, and for me on my car, I have the license plate with our crest, and, wherever I go, I'm an ambassador of the club. And so I want to make sure throughout, whatever social platform it be, or, personal or, physical interaction with people, that I am representing what Real Salt Lake is and what the Larry H. Miller Group now is as well.
Look, I don't want to give away how old I am, but let's just say I got into, marketing way before there were computers and way before there were a lot of the tools that you now have. But one of the things that I do remember early on is that a professor talked about the, unique selling proposition. Brady, what is your unique selling proposition to both your existing employer, and then what will be your unique selling proposition, let's say, to your next employer, whoever that may be?
Yeah. What I always want to be known for is someone that can be trusted and someone that can be relied on to get the job done, someone that's dependable. I think early on, like we kind of mentioned before, if you mess up one time or you deliver a report inaccurately, and mistakes will happen, granted.
Of course, always do.
And people will lose trust in you. And so, if someone asks me or tasks me to do something, I could say, I don't know. And that's a valid answer.
That's the best answer if you don't know.
Yeah, I'd rather say almost I don't know than make up something and then it'll come back and hurt me. And so I think for me, that's kind of my biggest thing is I want to be dependable. I want to be someone that can find the answers, problem solve, critically think. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find someone or find a way to get it back to them.
Sure.
I love that answer because, you said you really went back to the basics, because I promise you, if I ask my students that today, they'll be like, I want to be creative. I want to be the data person. And they bring up all of these robust skills, but just be trustworthy. Just be dependable. I think that's incredibly important to get back to the basics. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
That is good too. Brady, there's no question that Dr. G is going to ask you at the end of this interview to appear in her class. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, Dr. G's smiling over there, but I know exactly, I'm learning what goes on inside her head. What are you going to tell them when you get there? When she has you zoom in to her 60 kids or 50, however many it is, what are you going to tell them about getting a job in sports and really all of the things that, are important about our business?
Yeah, I think one thing that, doesn't really, it's not read anywhere, it's flashy to be a part of a sports team, but it's also kind of hard. And there's a lot of hours that go into it. And you'll find, as you speak with other people in the sports industry, that there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. And so that's why I would say find, kind of as I mentioned before, find a leader that you can learn from and is open to teaching you and developing you, because that's really how it'll work out in the end, and how you'll be satisfied and feel good about yourself wherever you go. Because, when you're part of a team that really is all in together and building each other up and having the same vision, like, you'll get through the hard times and it'll all work out, and you'll laugh about it later and be like, hey, like, remember that time when we did XYZ? Like, that was super hard and took a lot of hours and we were tired, but it's great to be a part of a team. And it's great to know we're all in this together and we're fighting for our team and for our organization to be successful. So I think that's kind of the main point that I would, stick to someone, is say, like, yeah, a lot of people want to be in sports, but people don't maybe realize how hard it is almost working in sports sometimes.
Do you work the game day experience at all also, or are you just mostly in back office type things?
I'm here and there available, but I'm not specifically working on every game. Obviously, if there's reports that need to go out or, tracking whatever it may be, I need to make sure that those are up and running for the team and the stakeholders. But on the game, fortunately, I continue to be able to sit in my seats and watch and experience the beautiful game. Exactly.
Be a fan.
Yep.
What do you love about sports?
Sports, and I think I see this as I get older and maybe I can call myself more mature, but sports have a unique way of unifying people across all walks of life, across whatever someone may be going through. Sports and entertainment have a way of connecting people and bringing people together. When something terrible may be going on in someone's life, if you come into a sports game, like, that all leaves behind and everyone is just there cheering on their team. And that's really a cool and unique experience that other industries won't have. People might not have the same passion for a tech company or finance industry, whatever it may be.
Sure.
Sports really has a cool way of connecting everyone together.
Yeah.
That's, I think, a great point. Dr. G and I interviewed a wonderful young man in the last show, Brian Anderson. And, I when people ask me about sports, and Dr. G's heard me say this at least 100 times, but, my attraction to sports is, and then one thing I talk about to students is that sports are fun. We're not talking about life and death here. We're not talking about, anything. It's more than fun. And it's also about, but just like, you said, though, a subset, I think it's important to people realize that sports is really a great tool that can bring people together. And it can also lift people up, as we learned in our last episode with Brian Anderson. So, I know Dr. G and I talk about this all the time, the power of sports.
Mm-hmm. The Larry H. Miller Company has one of their taglines, and I think it's their main one, is enriching lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what they've come in and purchased the team, and their overall goal for the organization and for all their companies is, how can we enrich lives with the platforms that we have available to us? And I really love that, because that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we find, and Dr. G and I have seen this on more than one occasion, by the way, is a lot of young students are a little bit intimidated. They're timid. And you even mentioned that you were in the very beginning. How'd you get over it? What did you do in order to get over, and not feel intimidated and not be timid and be able to, put yourself out there?
I think, like I said, it's a game of numbers. And I think when you get that first response, it's like, whoa, like, I did something right. And it boosts that confidence of, hey, like, it's not all that bad. And so I would say getting that first win or getting that first response from someone is like, hey, like, maybe what I said worked and it just didn't hit the right people. And so it's being consistent with what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're reaching out to people. You can't get rejected. And, I had multiple rejections and, continue to still be timid in certain meetings, but it's all about, how am I being consistent? How am I delivering my message? And am I confident in myself in what I'm saying? And I think that's the biggest thing.
Were there any courses that you took that you found like, you know what, I wish I hadn't taken that course or didn't need to? Or on the other side of that equation, numbers guy, are there any courses that maybe you wish you would have taken that you didn't?
Like I kind of mentioned at the top, I wish I would have done more computer science courses because I feel like that's really prevalent.
Writing code?
Exactly. In what I'm doing now. If I could have raised my hand and said, hey, like, I'm going to build this website for the organization, or I'm going to adjust this. I don't have the skills to do that now, but that would have been cool to be able to say that. So that's, I think, one piece. Another piece is, I wish I'm working on my communication skills. And that's something that I know growing up, I wasn't very good at. I wish I would have been able to take some public speaking courses or some sort of communication courses, because ultimately, when you get thousands of people applying for certain jobs, they're all going to have the same level of coding experience. They're all going to have the same level of the hard skills, but it's the kind of the soft skills. How are you talking to people? What's your body language looking like? I wish I would have learned that earlier on, because that's really what sets some people apart from getting a job or not getting a job.
Dr. G, as an educator, I mean, I know you push this a lot. Tell us a little bit about, what you tell students about, just like you said, soft skills, hard skills.
Yeah. I love, Brady, that you talked about the importance of public speaking, because it's everything in our industries, right? We have to be just great people. Well, great people. And it's like we have to know how to like work with people and talk with people and have those skills. And so I'm very intentional on making sure I develop them in every single course that I'm in, whether it's research or whether it's a more, sexy course, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So it's incredibly important to the way that I go about things. And so, no, I completely agree. And that's how I do it.
It's the other side of that. And I'm sure, Brady, your skills are getting honed every day, about being able to use data to tell a story. That's the biggest thing I like to, people ask me, when I, let's say before I bought SBR now, what I did? I said, well, if you want to know what I really did, I was a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I used data to tell my stories, and I used insights to build the stories. I can't stress that enough that, I think, look, a lot of people can churn out a lot of numbers, and believe me, there's, with AI now and different tools, you talked about Domo, talked about Power BI. I'm looking, at, what's it called? I forgot, SiteQuest or something from AWS, which is another one of those tools. But how important is it to be able to tell a story, Brady?
Incredibly important. And that's something that I've learned even in the last year or so in my career is, like you mentioned, Neil, someone could be the greatest coder, or they could be the greatest, they could output reports, but unless you can convey that message and communicate that to the stakeholders, it doesn't do you any good. And so that's actually a piece that our team is kind of working on right now, is specifically, what can we do to really hone in and convey a message clearly? And, whether that's cutting back certain KPIs because they're not needed, or they clutter a report. How can we really convey a message to the stakeholders in our organization? And so, incredibly important.
And talking about a story, Brady, I know we're coming towards the end of this interview, but you are a great hometown story. Okay. You stayed close to your Utah roots, and now you get to help shape the future of the team that you grew up being a fan of. So what I want to know is, what does that mean to you personally and professionally?
Wow. That's great. Great question, Dr. G.
It means a lot. And many students won't have many people won't have the opportunity to work for their hometown team. And, it's an extra level of passion, call it, drive that I have that I can't mess up. I'm in this, very important seat in the organization, and I want to give it my all, because this is my team. My friends are in the fan base. Like, this is a community here at Real Salt Lake and Utah soccer, and we cannot mess up. And that's just, an added layer of what I want to do for this fan base is, be someone that, a lot of times people say, it's just, people sitting high up making the decisions, and they don't care about us. They just care about money. It's like, no, like I read the comments, as bad as it may be. Like, I'm on social media, I'm figuring out what the fans like, what they don't like. And it's like, I really want to be that sounding board and voice for the fans within this organization. And that's really, really cool. And really cool that I get to come to games and cheer on my team and say, hey, like, because of me or because of the work that our team did, we were able to do this, X, Y, Z, and even point stuff out in the stadium like, hey, that sponsorship right there, like that was because of our help. And we were able to get that across the line. And, I think it, like I said, it's just, we cannot mess up. And especially, with the World Cup coming and the growth of soccer, like we really have to catch the lightning in the bottle that's going to happen right now. No one really knows what the World Cup is going to bring to the United States. We all just think it's going to explode and blow up. And so
I'm going to talk about that actually at the top of the show, quite frankly, with
how
Dr.
can we
G,
be ready and how can we captivate and capture the fans,
from
a revenue point of view, but then also like just the personal side of it. Like we need to make sure that we're treating our fans how they should be treated here.
Yeah, I could get into that and talk about, the effect of the World Cup and what it's going to have and all that. I mean, not just on, revenue in terms of, revenue, ticket sales, but, how it's also going to be able to drive participation in soccer, because that's a big issue, as well as the sale of equipment, footwear, and apparel. Again, these are all important parts that many times people just don't think about. Hey, Dr. G and I would really like to thank Brady Ulloa from the Utah Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals, working with the Larry Miller Sports and Entertainment organization, for being on My First Job in Sports today. Brady, thanks very much for being on.
No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys, and to all the students out there, take your shot. Like you never know what's going to hit or what won't. And don't be afraid to, like they say, you're going to miss all the shots you don't take. And so make sure to take them.
Didn't Yogi Berra say that? Is that a yogiism? I think I don't remember. You're a little too young for the yogiisms, Brady. So, Brady, again, Dr. G and I want to thank you for coming on My First Job in Sports.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to My First Job in Sports. This show has been produced by Brad Maybe. Back episodes can be found at sportsmarketanalytics.com, on the SBRnet YouTube channel, or all major podcast platforms. If you like the show, give us a great review. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or X.